Imagine you're standing in the middle of Dubai Mall, right beneath that massive aquarium, watching the fish drift past. It's 2024, and the place is electric. Thousands of people from every corner of the planet are brushing shoulders with you, credit cards ready, shopping bags swinging. The air conditioning is cranked up so high that you almost forget there's a scorching desert just beyond those glass walls. Now freeze that image in your mind, because I want you to hold it against what happened just 14 months later, when that same mall became a ghost town, when the fish tank went half dark to save electricity, and when the stores that once had waiting lists started quietly boarding up their windows. This is the story of how one of the most ambitious cities ever built by human hands started to come undone, not in a single dramatic collapse, but in a slow, grinding series of dominoes that nobody wanted to admit were already falling. Dubai was never just a city. It was a statement, a declaration to the entire world that if you had enough money, enough vision, and enough willingness to simply ignore the natural order of things, you could build paradise anywhere, even in the middle of a furnace. And for a while, my God, it worked. In 2025, Dubai International Airport welcomed 95.2 million passengers through its doors, a number so staggering it made every aviation analyst in the world sit up straight. That single airport was pumping roughly 27% of the entire Emirates' GDP through its veins, a fact Oxford Economics quietly documented and most people just as quietly ignored, because who wants to think about fragility when everything looks so magnificent? But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. An economy built almost entirely on the assumption that the skies will always be open is not a thriving economy. It's a gamble. A beautiful, chrome-plated, marble-floored gamble. And on the 1st of March 2026, that gamble was called. Terminal 3 at DXB didn't explode in some Hollywood fireball. It was hit, for people were injured, but the physical damage almost didn't matter. What shattered was something far more expensive than concrete and glass. It was the promise. The absolute, gold-engraved promise that Dubai was untouchable. Insurance companies, who have a very cold and very honest way of looking at the world, immediately started hiking conflict risk premiums by 500%. British Airways suspended flights until July. And just like that, the airport that once roared with the sound of 95 million annual passengers was operating at around 12% capacity, hemorrhaging $15 million every single day just to keep the lights on in empty terminals. Flight traffic collapsed by 70%. The Asia-Europe supply chain, which had quietly threaded itself through Dubai like a nervous system, went into paralysis. And somewhere in a glass boardroom, someone finally said what everyone already knew but had been too polite to admit. The hub-and-spoke model that Dubai staked everything on only works when the hub is safe. The moment that safety became questionable, the entire spider's web started to unravel at the center. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Dubai's collapse isn't just an aviation story. It's a story about what happens when you build an empire on the assumption that nothing will ever go wrong, and then something does. Take Burj Al Arab, the hotel that literally invented the concept of 7 stars. That helipad where Tiger Woods once hit golf balls into the ocean. The private beach where a single night cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Debris from an intercepted drone fell onto the white shell of that building, and the repair estimate came in at over $40 million. But again, the money almost isn't the point. The point is that the ultra-wealthy, the people who were paying $20,000 a night specifically because they believed they were buying total insulation from the chaos of the world, suddenly realized they hadn't bought safety at all. They'd bought the illusion of it. And rich people, whatever else you might say about them, are extraordinarily fast at recognizing an illusion once it cracks. Capital flows quietly shifted towards Singapore and Switzerland. Occupancy at Burj Al Arab dropped below 10%, the worst figure in its entire history since 1999. A hotel that employed 1,500 people to serve its guests was now maintaining that same workforce for a few dozen rooms. From a pure financial standpoint, it's not a hotel anymore. It's an enormously expensive liability dressed up in the world's most recognizable silhouette. The helipad where celebrities once posed for photographs now hosts low-altitude defense equipment. The brand has reportedly lost 35% of its value. And there are whispers, internal financial whispers, about a temporary closure just to stop the bleeding. This is what happens when the business model is built entirely around excess and the market for excess evaporates overnight. Back on the mainland, Dubai Mall was always more than a shopping center. I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but stay with me. This place contributed roughly 5% of the entire Emirates' GDP. 80 million visitors a year walked through those doors. Fashion Avenue wasn't just a corridor of luxury brands. It was a psychological experience, a carefully engineered environment designed to make spending money feel not just acceptable but aspirational. And then March 2026 arrived and foot traffic fell by 45% in weeks. Revenue on Fashion Avenue collapsed by 60% in a single month. The cost of running the industrial-scale air conditioning needed to keep a desert mall at a comfortable temperature surged by 25% when oil prices crossed $110 a barrel. The aquarium started dimming some of its lights to cut costs. 15% of franchise stores began quietly packing up and cutting their losses. The spending mentality that Dubai had spent decades cultivating, the casual confidence that there would always be more where that came from, evaporated and was replaced by something the city had never really had to deal with before: the instinct to stockpile essentials. The mall wasn't a destination anymore. It was an air-conditioned warehouse running out of reasons to stay open. And then there's the tower. Burj Khalifa, 828 meters of pure defined human ambition, the building that was supposed to prove once and for all that there are no limits to what engineering and money can accomplish together. Except that at 828 meters, you also become the single largest radar cross-section in the civilian landscape. Observation decks closed indefinitely because the missile warning time in Dubai had shrunk to somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. Think about what that actually means. You cannot evacuate thousands of tourists from the 148th floor in 3 minutes. It's not a logistics challenge. It's an impossibility. Property values in the surrounding downtown Dubai development dropped by 22% in 60 days. The high-speed elevators that Ammar once used as a selling point now operated on restricted power to conserve backup energy. International offices evacuated to neighboring countries. And the tower itself, that monument to human ego and engineering genius, was reportedly being used as a communications antenna for military operations. The symbol of everything Dubai wanted to represent had been repurposed into a tool of survival. 18 ballistic missiles had landed within a 50-kilometer radius. The $20 billion downtown Dubai project was beginning to feel the domino effect. Out on the water, Palm Jumeirah was discovering something that engineers had always known but marketers had been careful never to emphasize too loudly. It is an artificial island with no natural geological foundation, entirely dependent on mechanical systems to maintain its structural integrity. When offshore explosions sent shockwaves through the water in late February 2026, glass panels shattered in coastal resorts across the island. When Jebel Ali port came under military control, the cost of living on Palm Jumeirah surged by 30% almost immediately because 80,000 residents suddenly realized that a single controlled access point was the only thing standing between them and a supply crisis. The luxury yachts left quietly, slipping out of the harbor one by one. Real estate listings multiplied, with villas being offered at a loss, but there were almost no buyers, because who buys property on an island that might get cut off from the mainland? With 46 UAVs having fallen into the surrounding waters, Palm Jumeirah ranked among the highest risk zones, isolated by design and impossible to adequately defend for the same reason. The Museum of the Future, that extraordinary eye-shaped building covered in Arabic calligraphy, was supposed to be the physical embodiment of the UAE's vision stretching all the way to 2071. It was a building about optimism, about the audacity of imagining a better world and then building a structure to prove you believed in it. By 2026, its operating budget had been cut by 40%, because 18% of the national budget had been redirected toward defense. The international experts who maintained its complex interactive systems started leaving due to security concerns, and without them, the displays went dark, one by one, becoming what one observer described as very expensive and very lifeless steel. The museum that was designed to make visitors believe in the future was expected to be open just 2 days a week by May 2026, to preserve the appearance of existence without actually bearing the cost of it. The first landmark to actually close was Global Village, and if you want to understand what Dubai was really trying to build, look at what Global Village represented. A 1.6 million square meter outdoor space hosting pavilions from 78 countries, 10 million visitors each season, thousands of small businesses from across the world selling food and crafts and culture side by side. It was a physical argument for the idea that borders are optional, that commerce can be the universal language, that Dubai could be the place where the world came together and shopped and ate and laughed. On the 1st of March 2026, the gates closed. An open-air space that large, pulling that many people together in one place, was simply impossible to secure against cheap drone attacks without spending 10 times more than the venue could ever generate. 3,500 booths from 78 countries sat empty. The replica Eiffel Tower and the fake Taj Mahal gathered dust under the sun. Thousands of small business owners lost everything in a single announcement. And Ski Dubai, the snow mountain inside a desert, the place that burns enough electricity to power a small city just to maintain a temperature 40 degrees cooler than the world outside its walls, was expected to be the second landmark to officially close. 22 tons of artificial snow threatened to become 22 tons of water if the backup power failed. German machinery maintenance costs had tripled due to sanctions and transport disruptions. Ticket sales had dropped by 75%. And beyond the economics, there was a question that started appearing in the conversations that city planners were no longer able to avoid. Is it ethical to maintain artificial skiing conditions while essential goods face shortage risks and the energy infrastructure is under threat? Closing Ski Dubai wasn't just a financial calculation. It was a statement about what a city in crisis is actually allowed to prioritize. And finally, Jebel Ali Port, the 9th largest container port on the planet, the logistical backbone that allowed Dubai to plug itself into global trade like no landlocked city ever could. The civilian yacht areas had been wiped out. The whole port was under military control. A container ship collision 35 nautical miles away had triggered a 50% reduction in civilian shipping traffic, driven by fears about the Strait of Hormuz. The million-dollar yacht berths were now stacked with aid supplies and defense equipment. Goods prices in the UK and Europe rose by 20% as the knock-on effects rippled outward. Jebel Ali was the last piece of civilian infrastructure to be absorbed into the military reality of 2026, and its transformation marked something significant. Dubai had stopped being a trade hub and started being a fortress, and those two things cannot coexist. So here we are. 9 landmarks. An airport running at 12% capacity. A 7-star hotel with 10% occupancy. A mall saving electricity by dimming its aquarium. A tower being used as a military antenna. An artificial island realizing it was never as independent as the brochures suggested. A museum about the future running out of present. A global village gathering dust. A snow mountain melting. And a port that forgot what peace felt like. The story of Dubai in 2026 isn't really about war. It's about the specific kind of vulnerability that comes from building everything on the assumption that the conditions will always stay favorable. It's about what happens when a city mistakes momentum for foundation and spectacle for stability. The real question isn't whether Dubai can recover, because cities have recovered from extraordinary things before. The question is what kind of Dubai emerges from the other side, and whether the lesson that gets learned is the right one. Because the foundation of genuine prosperity was never the height of the tower. It was always the depth of the roots underneath it.